Hey, y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. As part of our Keeneland card series, today we're going to be looking at the All-Turf Pick 3 for Friday's card, and that does include the Maker's Mark Mile, a Grade 1 stakes race. So let's take a look. The first leg of the Turf Pick 3 is the 5th at Keeneland, and it's an allowance N1X for 3-year-old fillies. It's run on the turf at 1 mile and 1/8. The first contestant is number 1, Mrs. Astor. She scratched out of the Sanibel Island at Gulfstream, so I'm not for a softer spot here, although I'm not sure it is. Gustin Stables, Jonathan Thomas, Johnny V in the saddle. That's all good stuff. This one in the Broker Maiden, it was really impressive, had a lot of kick and looked like they hadn't even got to the bottom over yet. So I really like this one. I think that in this field should have a big closing kick and is definite contender. Mademoiselle Jackie should probably be a pace presence in this race, coming from the 2-hole. Can't deny Christophe Clement. He's an excellent turf trainer. He's a good conditioner of 3-year-olds. She's kept very good company. Well Into and Haystack both came back to win. Metaphysical finished, was in I believe it was the Sanibel Island last, and was very up near the lead and very competitive in that race. I think finished second. So she's been keeping good company and been competitive with them. Should be on the engine and should be the pace, and the question will be whether or not she's able to back it down and wire the field. I'm not so sure that that's going to be possible, given some of the other talent in this race. And I'm kind of on the fence about using her, but I can't talk you out of it. Hopefully, you'll get a decent price. Cephine is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about these McAfee things. I just can't. I've been trying to uninstall it. I'm going nuts. I'm going to have to get a professional. Sorry about that. The last race that Cephine ran in was really didn't turn out very much, other than South Lawn, oddly enough, who won the Fairgrounds Oaks and is probably going to be a pretty good contender for the Kentucky Oaks. But aside from her, the rest of the field has been come back pretty subpar and hasn't done a whole lot. I think there's others that appeal a lot more in this spot, although you do get Bill Buick as the jockey. He's a top jockey in Europe. I'm sure he's here for a stakes race this weekend. So, but you see the buyers are pretty light, and Sabalenka was up the track in the Appalachian last week. So I don't think this one factors in this race. CC Cruise Control is trained by Kenny McPeak, and as we know, he takes his time with horses. And this one had kind of a checkered 2-year-old campaign. Really didn't factor very well in any of the 2-year-old stakes races. Not to say that this one couldn't possibly improve. I mean, she did get a third in the juvenile fillies at Kentucky Downs, so maybe there's something there. I just think it's going to take a little while to get it out of her, knowing how McPeak trains. So I'm prepared to wait, and I'm not going to use this one. Surya was not a very auspicious 3-year-old debut. Granted, it was a pretty good field with Well Into, Erna, and Be My Sunshine, but she was up the track and didn't do too bad early. She was pulling a bit, but she really didn't have any excuses because she was saving all the ground on the rail. And when asked, she just didn't have anything in the tank whatsoever. May have needed a race, I don't know, but judging by her 2-year-old form and what she just did at 3, I'm not going to use her at this time, but maybe down the road, but not right now. Wonderful Lady is pretty interesting. She has run at class levels a lot higher than what she's running against here, so that's a good sign. It is her first U.S. start. Brendan Walsh is pretty good. You can see he's 3 for 10 over the last few years. Most recently, he's more like 15, half of that, 15%. But nonetheless, I think this one is definitely a fit. She's been running in stakes and over there and has done okay. But I think it's fair to assume that she'll be a competitive in this field. The work tab isn't bad. She looks like she's in pretty good shape. So I think this one you have to use. Of course, the Europeans can always be any kind. We know this, but I think this is one that you probably want to keep on there. Embrace Me is this one really didn't show much at 2, and I don't. I want to wait one to evaluate at 3 because I didn't see enough at 2 to get me excited. Knock Your Socks Off is the versatile one in the group. Dirt or turf, it doesn't seem to matter. Did pretty well last year. Ran second to Hoosier Philly, back when Hoosier Philly was good, and ahead of it Pretty Mischievous. So that's pretty good company. On turf, she didn't finish second in the Jessamine behind Delight. Her turf form at 2 was pretty good. If you draw a line through the Rachel Alexandra, where God knows what happened in that race, she just was no factor whatsoever. I think her turf form would indicate that maybe that she's capable of a little better. And this being second off the layoff and moving to grass, I think perhaps this might be a good spot. Chris Block's a nice trainer. And I think dirt to turf seems to be a pretty good angle, and this one's demonstrated ability. So you might get a bit of a price given the last effort. So I think maybe you think about using this one for sure. Clever Joke I really like. Wayne Catalano and Jared Loveberry, that's that Chicago connection. This one is, that last race was really a thing of beauty at the fairgrounds. Was a little keen early, got shut off in traffic at the top of the turn, and Corey Lannery swung her out, and then she just blew right by the field. Showed a lot of kick, a lot of pluck, and really like this horse a lot. So I think this one is a definite use. Second off the layoff's a great angle for Wayne Catalano, and he appears to have some pretty good turf horses this year, and I think this one is no exception there. Also, keep in mind, that last one was against older horses in March for a 3-year-old. That's pretty good. So I think this one's definitely capable of more. I'm definitely going to use. Malibu is one that really haven't liked her last 2 efforts in Stakes Company. Granted, it was Stakes Company, but in Papillion, Cairo Consort, Alpha Bella, Heavenly Sunday just came back and ran a nice race. That's a nice group to be in. But she's not competitive in them. And what I don't see is any type of progression where she's getting any better. So she seems to be kind of stuck where she is. She can't seem to get back to that form she had in the wait a while. The post isn't going to do her any favors here. And she's really not getting the class relief they may have anticipated when they signed her up for this one. Because, as mentioned, there's a couple in here that are definitely stakes caliber. So I don't think Malibu is a realistic use. And basically being on the outside and trying to, she'll probably want to try to get to the front end. I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm not going to use. Strikingly Spun has Irad Ortiz on her. And, that's always a good thing. Hard Spun and Smart Strike underneath. I think turf won't be a problem for this one at all. Joe Sharp is 17% with First Turf, but his ROI is $1.86. And so he usually, if you look at the winners, most of them were chalk or close to chalk. This one won't be. And that last race at Oaklawn was a real dud. He was Strikingly Spun was the favorite in that race. I believe he was 4-5. It was nowhere. Excuse me. Was up the track, never really made any type of run whatsoever. So it's curious that they now move this one to turf. It looks like they're trying to reignite her a little bit. I'm willing to wait, given the other talent in this field. So I won't be using Strikingly Spun. You'll probably get some value. Hope you will. With a rod on it, maybe not. But I don't know if you want to roll the dice with this one. Be my guest. I can't see it. Around the Sun, Rusty Arnold, debut at 3 wasn't very good. Again, it's in that well into field, and that it was a good field. I'm not going to discount that, but she obviously wasn't competitive with that group, and you've got a similar group here. So maybe second off the layoff, she steps it up a little bit. It's not really a good angle for Rusty Arnold. So I just don't. I'll wait to see how she does, and I'm not going to use her here. They're all also eligibles, as they always are, in Keeneland races. We've got a couple here that you might want to take a look at. I'll go over them very quickly. All-American Beauty, Shug McGahee, trainee, Frankie Dettori in the irons. That's pretty good for turf. Florida Oaks really was okay, nothing more than that, but looks like might be capable of better. That was her first against winners, so might want to think about her. Venecia, it could be any kind. Chad Brown, first in the U.S., but it's also her first turf, oddly enough, being a European horse. If Irad isn't going to run strikingly spun, he's going to have this one. Could be any kind, really. And if you want to, Chad and Irad is usually a pretty good combination. You might want to think about if he gets in. I like Be My Sunshine, Safi Joseph, Tyler Gaffalione. That last race with Well Into was a pretty good race and looked really capable. And I think this one, the next start, would definitely be promising. So I think this one that you would want to consider too, if she draws in. 16, Jenny Lind. Steve Asmussen's game is not the turf. And at first turf, he's like 13%. This one is by Mendelssohn, and so I think there's some grass potential here. But it's kind of curious to me that this one just ran on synthetic surface and won, and yet is moving to turf. I don't know what the deal is there, but Walter Rodriguez is a pretty good apprentice jockey, so it could do something. I mean, I would wait for a price, but I think there's others in here I like a lot better. So let's take a look at leg number 2. The second leg of the Turf Pick 3 is the 7th race. It's the Limestone, which is an ungraded stakes for 3-year-old fillies at 5.5 furlongs on the turf. Number 1 is Sassy Nature. She is going to be on the engine. I don't think there's any doubt about that, especially being on the rail. She's just going to try to hold on. That's what she does. Definitely getting better with every start. And this is a big class jump, I think, from what she has handled in the past. But Just to Care is a pretty good horse, too. And so that wasn't a bad race. But I think that this is a big class edge. I think being on the engine, if she can hang on, it's possible. So I think she's a win candidate, and I'd use her. My Sweet Affair is interesting in that Rod Ortiz has ridden about 3 or 4 others in this race, and yet he decides to stay on this one. He, didn't do too bad from the 11 hole last time, and definitely has the right style. I mean, he's going to be coming just off the pace, and that's probably a pretty good place to be. So this one's kind of interesting, and I think you're going to get a price. And I'm going to use this one more, maybe just for the value more than anything else. And I think I think he's smarter than me at seeing horse flesh and what he likes about him. So we'll take a chance with this one. Love Reigns had a lot of ballyhoo prior to the Breeders' Cup, and had a couple of nice efforts, including didn't do bad when she went over to Oxford, Ascot rather. For the Queen Mary. And, Wesley Ward, this is what he does, turf sprints. I mean, I think you can probably forgive the Breeders' Cup, but that was her last appearance. And that's the only thing that kind of gives me a little bit of pause is that she's looking at a 5-month layoff. Got Joe over, and Irad didn't stick around. That's kind of the other thing. I think you could use this one for sure. I'd leave it up to you whether you want to keep her on or not. I'm not going to use her because there's others in here that I like a little better, but this is certainly a logical one. Accomplished Girl and Safi Joseph had the best last buyer in her maiden, but it also came after a freshening, and now she's going. She's only got a month, 27 days likely between starts, so that gives me a little bit of pause because that was such a huge jump from what she had done prior. And this is a very classy field, and so I'm going to wait one on this one. Stone Silent, I don't know what to make of. This horse broke her maiden in a stakes race. Granted it was ungraded, but still, you can't deny that. That's a pretty impressive effort. The next start, not so great. Just did, basically ran up against a pretty good field. Classy Brigette is a really nice horse, and Pate's not bad either. First effort on turf. John Sadler, generally doesn't ship that well from the West Coast, even though, granted, the last race was at Oaklawn. I'm going to wait one with this one because, like I say, I think there's others who are better. Just to Care is really interesting to me. Ran against Sassy Nature, who we saw earlier, and has a pretty good closing kick. And, the added half a furlong is definitely in this one's favor because she tends to run from behind. I think this one with another jump forward could be competitive. I couldn't talk you out of using her. I think she's, if you get a price, this is one you definitely want to consider. I'm just not sure that a win candidate with the classier members of this field, I'm not sure that this one would be a use. But if you want to try to get some value on your ticket, this one you might want to think about. Alluring Angel is a really deep closer, and I think that's going to be a problem in this race. You really don't have enough time to unleash that stride. Granted, this one did it in her maiden effort to start, but I don't know. I just look at this one and I don't see that. There's improvement here, but why all of a sudden, after you've been running around 2 turns, moving back to a sprint? So I'm not sure that they're overly confident in what this one can do. And I think there's others that I think I trust more, so I'm not going to use this one. American Apple, threw that 47-1 matron bomb last year. But really, the thing that is really a quandary to me is she hasn't run anything close to that in any of her other races, and that includes the Breeders' Cup. So I wonder if that was just an anomaly. I don't know what to make of this one. I just can't trust this one enough. Clearly has the ability to run a big race, and coming off a 5-month layoff, who knows? Just very well may do it. But I just don't trust enough to use on the ticket, and I'm not going to use. Camp Aquila, one thing to know right away is Tom Amos is 0 for 29 with turf sprints. And this one really doesn't stack up anyway. The last effort was around 2 turns and wasn't bad, but all the prior efforts wouldn't cut it in this group. So this one's an easy toss for me. Twirled is Steve Asserson. Turf isn't really his thing, but he's got one here. Frankie Dettori's aboard. This one showed some ability early on dirt, and didn't do bad on turf for her first effort, but seems to have regressed steadily throughout her 2-year-old campaign. So I'm kind of thinking that this one is a way to sort of jumpstart her back into gear, and I think definitely this one will be racing on dirt in the next start. So I think this one is just just a sort of way to wake her up a little bit. And I don't think she's good enough anyway against the more prominent runners. Lady Hollywood, I think, is Wesley Ward's best chance to win this race. This one, it came over from Europe, and the first start was the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint, and didn't do bad against the boys at all. Finished a pretty good 5th and was in the race, but for some reason, hasn't raced since, and that's a little bit of a pause. Whenever you have those 5-month layoffs after a Breeders' Cup race, a lot of them don't come back and run terribly well. It's just the nature of the beast. So that's something you have to be concerned about. But if you take a look at this one's form, this one was running in classes way above what she was facing here today, and was getting better in every single race. You could see at 2 years old, carried 135 pounds. So this one was definitely well thought of for good reason. She had 4 wins. They all were at 5 furlongs. So, there's an extra panel here, half a panel here. So maybe that's an issue. But Wesley Ward, this is his first start with this horse, and look at his record with first time with the team. I mean, he's 7 for 14. So, and coming over from Europe, he does pretty well too. So, I think this one is an obvious win candidate and would be a definite use. Dance Macabre, with other horses, I might be concerned about the outside post, but not with this one because she broke her maiden from the 10 hole at the same distance at Colonial Downs. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. Her last win was flattered by the win that Papillion got in the Grade 2 at Keeneland last week. And, that was a really big score. Papillion looked awesome. And I think that flatters Dance Macabre an awful lot. The one thing is this goes back to one turn. But obviously this horse has very good form in that regard. I'm a little surprised that they're cutting this one back, but I wouldn't see that as really a liability. Kelsey Danner's a good trainer. So I think this one is a definite use and is at the top of the class and should be considered a win candidate. The third and final leg of the Turf Pick 3 at Keeneland is the 9th race. It's the Grade 1 Maker's Mark Mile. It's a mile for 4-year-olds and up on the turf. Number 1 is Speaking Scout. Last time we saw this one was in the Pegasus World Cup Turf, and was kind of a we knew about this horse beforehand to expect a pretty good race, and he delivered. He ran his career best Beyer and finished a pretty good third. He was not going to get to the top 2, but nonetheless, it was a nice effort. Cuts back to a mile here and has had a bit of a freshening. But the only thing I think about is that I kind of think they were pointing him to the Pegasus. So usually that would mean that the cycle is going to start all over again. So maybe we couldn't expect quite so good an effort for this race. However, at 4 years old, he could certainly build on that and run a better race. And you would get a price on him if you want to use them on your tickets. I wouldn't discourage you. I just kind of like others a little better. Up to the mark is Rapoli Stables, Irad and Todd. It's a pretty good combination. But this is a big step up in class from where this one has been running. An optional 62 to a Grade 1 is a really big jump. And I don't see numbers here that tell me that this one is going to skyrocket into a Grade 1 winner just yet. So not for me. Chez Pierre hasn't done anything wrong since he came over from France. He's been competing at Laurel and Tampa, and I'm just not sure the fields that he was dealing with there are going to stack up with what he's got here. That's really the only issue I have. I think this one has some talent, but I just think that there are others more appealing, particularly from what they've had more of a challenge class-wise. And you can see running against Emmanuel last time, he really didn't do much. So that tells me that maybe when the rubber meets the road, this one's not going to be there. So I'm not going to include him. Number 4 is Emmanuel, Todd Pletcher, trainee. We saw this one first in 3-year-old Derby Trail and it didn't work out too well. So they moved him to turf and he seems to have found a niche and as a nice runner. And his Canadian turf was a nice effort. And so was the Tampa Bay prior to that. So he's third off the layoff, and that would mean more than likely a really good effort is expected. But there's some others in here that we're going to get to that he's going to have a little trouble dealing with. I think they're similar running styles, and there are others a little classier in here. So I like Emmanuel, and I think that if you want to try to upset the apple cart, he's probably as good a candidate as any. But I just like, I would think about him more for the exotics than I would as a win candidate here. Dr. Zemf, this, Chad Brown import. And the first race this one ran in was, the usual optional claimer that they often put these European imports in for the first race. And he won, and he did pretty well. But those last two in Ireland where he was facing, really you'd have to, honestly would say, not the tip-top They were pretty good. Kinross, is really good at 7 furlongs, and Order of Australia, of course, won a Breeders' Cup race, but that was a couple years ago. I don't necessarily think that they were at they could be considered the top of their divisions, and this one didn't do too terribly well. He looks to me more like a sprinter than a miler. His one effort at a mile around 2 turns was not very good. However, it is Chad Brown, and if anybody was going to make him a miler, it would be him. I think he's up against it in this one, and I'll wait till the next stakes race when the class level isn't quite so high. In Love is trained by Paulo Lobo, and won the Keeneland Turf Mile here for a career high buyer a couple years ago, and it's sort of been on the downward slide since. The record's a little spotty. You can see the class levels have been gradually declining. Maker's Mark ran in this race in last April, and then followed it up with the Manhattan, and then after that it's been an all ungraded stakes, and really hasn't been lighting the world on fire. So I think maybe it's the end of the road for this one, so I'm not going to include In Love. Modern Games, we all know about. What can you say? He's a 2-time Breeders' Cup champion. He's about the best miler in the world, and he's here. Charlie Appleby's stakes record is 50%, and that's pretty darn good. Usually when he brings a horse here, they run and they win. Aside from that, this one has a ton of ability. I'm not even worried about the long layoff because he's done it before. So that's not a concern in the slightest. He's just better than the rest of these. And if he runs his race, he's going to win. And I see no reason to think that he won't. He's only 4 years old, so he's still got actually room for improvement. And I'm just not willing to bet against him. And that's why this field isn't 12 and there's only 8. It's because of this one. So he is an obvious win candidate and a definite single for me. Number 8, Cabo Spirit, is been running out in California. And again, California turf horses don't ship very well to the east. This one has been doing okay at best. The Kilroe Mile, he got a 3rd, and he's got a couple of wins at the graded level, but again, it's California, and I don't think he's any threat to Modern Games in this race, so he would be a toss. So let's take a look at our ticket and see what it comes up with. So here's our ticket for the Keeneland Turf Pick 3. There's a lot of choices in this one, and there's a lot of short prices potentially too. You could have a really chalky ticket that won't pay very much. So let's try to blow it open a little bit with a small ticket that's got some overlays in it to deal with the single that we're going to have to make with Modern Games. So in the 5th, we're going to go 169. In the 7th, we're going to go 2-6-11, and the 9th, we're going to single Modern Games, and I don't see any way around that one. So we're just trying to get some value, and if it's 3 times 3, it's a $9 ticket. So if we lose, we lose. I think if you want to do a little mix and match, there are some other options that we've alluded to here, and I would just go with your gut, but I'd try to find prices in those first 2 legs and see if you can make a good ROI out of it. There's certainly a lot of ways you can go with when you have deep fields like this, and that's one of the nice things about Keeneland is you've always got a full field and a lot of different ways to mix and match to come up with some good value. The best part of it is having a potential single like Modern Games underneath that allows you to find some more value and bolster your tickets for your selections for the other 2 races. I wouldn't go too deep. I would if I was going to spread. I would probably prefer to spread in the 7th race, the Turf Sprint, as opposed to the 5th. And I wouldn't go past like a $20 ticket because if the chalk comes in, you're just going to be your ROI goes to hell, and that's not what we want. So I wish you the best of luck with however you choose to do it, and I hope my analysis helps you, gives you a little insight. as to what's available to you. We will continue with our Keeneland card series. We'll have something for Saturday as well as Sunday, and including the individual report on the Lexington Stakes and how we see that breaks down. I haven't forgotten about the Kentucky Derby. How can we? It's getting too close. So we'll be monitoring that as well, and we'll have an updated top 25 list. We might even cut it down to top 20 at this point because we'll be pretty certain, I think, after this weekend what it's going to look like. But we'll just have to see. If you like what you see here, as always, please like and subscribe, and we really do thank you for tuning in. It really means a lot to us that you're part of this community, and I hope you feel the same. I'll talk to you soon. Be well.